Alright, hi people. Before I get into this video, I want to say a few things. Number one, thanks for Chris for asking this question again. Um, the other thing I want to say is that if you guys don't know, this video is basically about um, the fundamentals and how to apply them to different armies and how different armies use them in their own ways. Now, this question, because Chris said fundamentals, the fundamentals that I teach, it's very, very difficult to address it and to just say that the fundamentals are this or that. So what I did was I knew what the fundamentals were for me. A lot of times in competitive scenes, the fundamentals are different for each individual. So immediately I was like, okay, well, let me think about what the fundamentals are. Let me think about what I teach and then what I use. And then on top of that, I was like, okay, so I have an understanding of what the fundamentals are for me. But those fundamentals are not fundamentals in a traditional sense. Because the fundamentals of playing 40k is the ability to read your rules, roll some dice, do a little bit of math, and memorize some numbers. And then you kind of move your pieces and you play the game, right? And the fundamentals that, if you want to go a little bit more advanced, are trading, do you split fire or not, stratagem uses, CP, expenditure. But these are not actually fundamentals. So if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll quickly find yourself essentially in these are more advanced tactics. These are things that people need to learn and get good at. And you can say that they're fundamentals and kind of add them into it, but if I was trying to get to the very core of it, and so I YouTubed it, I Googled it, I basically found nothing that was relevant to what I was thinking in my head, and then I messaged Brad Chester, and I was like, okay, these are my thoughts that I have in my head. I'm going to talk about what is Brad Chester's thoughts, okay? And he told me that board position and consistency of movement, those two things are exactly what I was thinking about, because when I'm coaching you guys and I'm playing the game, I'm not thinking about how much damage I'm going to deal, all this stuff. It's kind of a byproduct. What I'm thinking about is the board position and how do I achieve said board position. And then I think about my movement and can I recycle my units? Can I do the same actions over and over again? Can I be consistent in my movement that my board position only grows and I get a better foothold of the game? And how good am I at moving my units effectively throughout the map to score secondaries, to stall my opponent, to get into advantageous positions, to get good shooting angles, to get cover while shooting, all these things, and how fast do I do it as well, right? So we're gonna focus on that and how I use it with every other army and how different armies use these things differently. And the funny thing is, a lot of armies in the game are very one-dimensional, and that's why it's a lot easier for people to play it, or they win randomly. Like world leaders, orcs, demons, monster mash nids, all tank guard. When you think about these lists, you can imagine it immediately in your head. You're like, oh, it's a tank army. They're gonna fucking have all their tanks and just shoot me off the map, right? That's the baseline of it. So their board position is kind of by default playing out in everyone's heads, and it's very easy to understand. Same thing with the world leaders or orcs that just want to come up the board and run at you, and whatnot. And then it comes down to timing and other things, but effectively that's what their design philosophy is of the army. So those are the fundamentals, and then I was gonna talk about a bunch of stuff as well. So I'm trying to hold back on it, but yeah. So that's my understanding. That's what came up with. That's what Brad Chester said. So everything kind of adds up to that. And when you guys remember me talking about rotating and stuff and reserves and how to deploy your units, all of these are to perfect your movement and to be consistent in your game plan and your gameplay. And your game plan is your board state and what board state you're trying to achieve, right? If you think back to when I'm teaching everybody how to rotate the map, and I say don't look at the map front, like in your deployment zone to your opponent's deployment zone. If you turn the map to the side you want to be on, that's where you want to be, and how does your army look when you achieve that position. That's the board state you need to visualize in your minds, and that's the board state you want to play with. And moving on to this, so today I asked in the Death and Glory live stream, because it pisses me off a lot, okay? And what pisses me off? What pisses me off is that the fact that a 3-2 player, a 4-1 player, a 5-0 player, and a 6-0 major winning player, all of these players don't understand how to rotate. They don't understand board state. They don't understand how to play the game in 5 turns. They don't understand anything. They don't even understand the design philosophy of their own list. Besides, I'm playing triple monolith. I'm going to teleport around and shoot you off the map. Oh, I see a weakness in my opponent's army. I'm going to kill them. I'm going to YOLO in my World Leader's army and see what happens. Or I'm playing orcs. I just overwhelmed them and won the game because I went first and just staged up on the whole map and then just proceeded to dumpster my opponent. I don't like this. And Batchester's answer was basically that this happens very often. Because I asked him the question, like, why is this so often? Why the fuck do I meet people or people that win GTs and they don't know how to play Warhammer? They only know how to try and kill their opponent as quickly as possible, and they want to play team deathmatch all day long. They only want to play team deathmatch, and they only win games because their army is focused on fucking heavy firepower or overwhelming their opponent and winning on the primary, like Wolf Jail or Demon Monster Mash, or having 60 tanks in their list and just like running their opponent over with guns, and their opponent's like, well, I can't kill your tanks, so I guess I'll just lose, right? It's very difficult, and that's why all the top players, like the actually good players who are human beings, what they do is take more trash and they utilize their trash to like move block and play the board and hold up their opponent's position, and they limit their opponent's movement and they limit their opponent's board state, and they understand the board state and they understand the movement, okay, of their own army, of their opponent's army, and they attack that. They don't attack their opponent's army based on, I have a bigger gun, you have this, right? That comes later. What they initially recognize is that I need to stall this position and I need to hold this position for myself. And if I do that for long enough, the game will end and I'll win the game. Or I'll deter my opponent from scoring secondaries or primary and I'll win the game. Just like my game against Guard, if you guys, most of you guys listened to my interview and there was a photo that came up at the end of it. I didn't win the game because I killed my opponent. In fact, I was tabled at the end of the game, pretty much. My opponent still had maybe 700 points on the board. But the point was that I took the board position that I wanted really, really fast, and I attacked the board, like, instead of attacking my opponent's army, right? I attacked I took over the board, and I stalled my opponent from playing the board that he wants to play. Because Guard wants to really like hold down the middle objectives and be durable and like shoot you and then be annoying with their revives and like keep sending units up and taking over primary basically. So I'm like, hell no, I'm gonna stall you in your own base. I'm gonna sacrifice my entire fucking army, right, in like 3 turns. But for those 3 turns, I'm gonna score like 15s and 10s on primary, and all my secondaries are gonna score 0s. And that's exactly what happened. He just scored like nothing, and I beat him, and I didn't wolf jail him exactly. Like, it wasn't a wolf jail style. It was a pressure slash, like, I did kill a lot of his units, but I pinpointed what he needed to do. I pinpointed what I was gonna do to counter his army, and I pinpointed the fact that like what units I need to take care of first before I start losing resources, how quick I need to play, and of course then it came into the point of like move blocking, right? It wasn't the same case of Wolf Jail, of me just like standing in front of him unkillable. It was the fact that he was killing me, so I had to give him things he could chew on, but also provide efficient threat overload on one side, or effective threat that I was like dealing damage that he had to come fight me on one side of the board, and I stalled the other side pretty much, reading the map and all that jazz. Okay, so why is this mathematician patterns thing open right now? Okay, so if we understand, I'm going to bring up my notepad real quick just so I can like follow through on everything, and you guys can also kind of follow along, because I know it can be kind of hard to just listen to me and try to understand. You might have to go back, re-listen, re-watch my rants or just my thought process. Why is so? I mean, let me put this down here first. So, fundamentals of 40K. What are they? Board position and movement. Okay. Consistency. This is from Batchester, so I'm just gonna use it. Ignore my spelling. I don't spell correctly. Okay, so movement consistency and board position. This is perfect. What is reserves? Movement. What is board position? Also reserves. Like, and to get this and get this going well, you have to actually move your units and create pockets and do all this stuff, right? I don't teach you guys bring this gun to kill your opponent. I tell you guys, no, move your units like this so you can create pockets, so you can bring in your reserves. Reserve this unit or not reserve it, and like push up this one side. You don't want to push up the one side if you're more of an elite player, or your list is like more castle format. You want to rotate the other opposite way, or in the corner, and like really play defensively and have assets in your list that can provide good board position, and then you can shoot out eventually, etc. Okay, so that's the fundamentals. Now we're going to go to why is this thing open about math and mathematics. So this thing says that apparently mathematicians say that mathematics is the study of patterns. Okay, of patterns and structures and numbers and patterns. Okay, I mean, this is good because it's telling you that all this is, and for me, right, why is a mathematician smart? Because he can come up with answers very quickly. Why can he come up with answers? Because he understands what's going on, and he understands the build up of everything. Why is that the case? Because if you look at patterns, right, if the pattern is there, you're gonna understand exactly like why, how, and in what amount, etc., and like how does it build up, what's the breakdown of it. So you're kind of breaking down the thing that you're seeing and the pattern of it, and also recognizing what is happening. Pattern is very cool because you don't like, if you play 10 games against me, you're gonna very quickly realize that I'm rotating the map. Okay, you're losing the game the same way. Catch the patterns when you watch Art of War play, or somebody that you like watching play in any sport or anything like this. Recognize patterns and recognize consistency and recognize what's happening, and then you want to build into them the more nuances of that. But that's why I had that up. And that's why if you're a numbers guy, you're not a mathematician, okay? Being a mathematician and understanding pattern recognition and like all this stuff and theory is more important than knowing the numbers of how many threes do you roll on 20 dice. I don't give a fuck how many dices I roll and how many attacks I get out of it. Okay, I really don't care, which is why it comes back to the whole fractions, and it goes back to the fact that why can I recognize 3% or 11 and like 23% out of whatever, like the fraction of that, right? Why does my head spit out a number? Because it kind of understands it in a different way, even though I can't exactly, my mind can't really tell me the exact thing and why it's doing it, but it recognizes enough stuff that I get a very, very close or the exact number often. So if this is going long for you guys, it's gonna be like this for a while, by the way, because I have to teach you guys this, because this is what's important, not this army moves like this army moves like this. Like, you guys can literally go watch YouTube videos on every single army and factions and how they play on the tabletop, and you don't have to listen to me. for that. That shit is out there and it's not needed. What's not out there is this thought process and why I have success and why I have success in every single game I go into, not just this, because it comes down to like fundamentals and understanding stuff. So going back to whatever the fuck I was saying, um, forgot my own thought process right there. But yeah, numbers guy, right? So if you're a numbers guy and you are like, I only follow the numbers or I want numbers to back me up, I don't like that ever, because numbers are only one part of it. And if you don't recognize the pattern or what is leading up to that number, then you're never going to understand like what's going on. You're only going to see that this army has this win rate, this thing has this going on, and etc. Okay? Or what's causing this. You need to understand what is causing something to happen rather than not. And then not just, 54% of the time this happens. Like, that might be true, but you want to understand why is it true. Because if you can identify that it takes a 3-step process to get to that 54%, if you attack one of those processes, that 54% will drop down to like 30% really fast, right? And which of those steps are actually more more valued in adding up to the 54%? Kind of like when you go to school. Okay, if you go to school, your final exam is worth more than most of your curriculum. Yeah, and then your units, exams, and your tests, whatever, are worth more than just your homework. So your homework and attending school is worth a little bit, and then attending school is worth a lot in Canada, but and then your exams worth like 20% or whatever, right, of whatever mark you get. Same thing in 40K or in that 54% win rate. Something's gonna add in more to that win rate than other things. Is the army broken? Is a certain unit broken? Is this matchup like very bad that's lowering the win rate? Is the armies that are showing up at top tables very consistently countering you? So when you do get to the finals, you always worst Sisters of Battle as a Demons player, and you always lose that game because it's impossible to win it, basically, if your opponent's like really good and or equal skill, whatever. So these are all like the metrics you want to be using and recognizing, rather than just saying that this should kill this should kill this, or my win rate is this, and this is how often like secret missions win you the game or loses the game. Like I don't really care about all of that stuff. I really want to understand the whys. That's what's important to me. And it comes back to this. Why are you winning the game? It comes back to like, what is going on? Board position and movement and consistency, right? This is what's going on. Nothing else is going on. People complain about I rolled bad dice. People complain about, oh, I got shot turn 1. Okay, that's like comes down to like consistency of board position and whatever. People blame the fact that they're losing the deployment zone. Well, when you think about losing in deployment zone, or in deployment, right, not deployment zone, everybody says that you lost the game in the deployment, blah 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 blah. Well, it's not you lost the game in deployment because you got ran the fuck over. It actually means you lost in deployment because you misdeployed your army, and they countered your deployment, or they rushed at you, or like they played very safely so you couldn't interact with them, and so you basically effectively lost a whole turn of 40K and lost the game that way. Okay, so losing the game in deployment actually goes a lot deeper than just, oh, I got alpha struck. Like, you don't lose the game just because an alpha strike is going on. Some alpha strikes are obviously trying to table you, and you will lose the game that way, so that's like a give, right? But some alpha strikes are alpha striking your army not to table you, but to get rid of a key piece. If I kill Be'lakor while sacrificing, let's just say, more points than Be'lakor's worth, I trade down. But if I take out a key piece of your army that relies, that makes your army kind of tick or work, you're going to be in a really hard time. If I'm playing Dark Angels, Deathwing Knights with -1 damage, etc., and I alpha strike you using, like, say, 500 points from army, let's just say, like, even more than that. Let's just say that I use, like, 700 points of my army to kill the Silent King, because he gives you ignore modifiers. All of a sudden, I might have lost 700 points of my own army, but the rest of my army, that's 1,300 points, you're never going to get rid of because you don't have ignore mods anymore. So all your damage output is literally 1 damage, no AP, no nothing. And I have AOC now. I have access to like my -1 damage, my AOC, my cover, smoke, whatever I need. So that's like a big part about it too. So losing the game in deployment can mean many things, but most importantly, it means that you misdeployed. And when you watch Art of War, sometimes they make mistakes with the testing stuff. They're like, "Oh, I really lost this flank," or "that I thought I would get, but I didn't get, so I would have paid more attention to it." Or that I misdeployed this unit here and I could have moved it somewhere else, right? Um, that's the important part. It doesn't really come down to the dice roll. It comes down to how you played the game, essentially. So let's talk. So now that we got that covered, I'm gonna go into my chessboard here. If I don't have anything else left. Yeah. Okay. So why do I have a chessboard up? Well, it's pretty simple. Why I have a chessboard up? It's because I want to show you board position, right? Now, typically, because I don't want to use I have the tabletop here, but I'll use this later. I might cross references, but like I don't want to go into this. This takes a lot of effort, and I can't pull up a real life camera to do this easier and show you guys. It's just, yeah. So chessboard, okay. You guys have all seen the chessboard. I'll probably play chess in your life. I'll understand chess to a little bit of a level or difficulty. Okay, so the most basic thing in chess that is extremely strong in anything is controlling the middle of the board, right? So if you control the middle of the board right here, why is it strong? Because it has, you're in the center, which means you can access most of the map from the center of the board. If you're on the left side, the right side becomes hard to contest, and the left side becomes hard to contest, right? But the middle of the board, you can go left or right, and it's very good. It's also centered around your key pieces here, your queen and king. But attacking the middle of the board is very, very strong. Same thing in Warhammer, right? If you want to get on primary, taking over the middle of the battlefield and having a good stronghold on that is very powerful. On top of that, if you do just shove your whole army to the center of the map, your opponent can't go anywhere. He can only go like here, but that's also getting close to you. He can go this way, but that's also kind of coming close to you anyways, right? It's closer than it was back here. So if he's trying to slingshot all the way down this way, you can always path that way and then meet him and intercept him and kind of crush him that way. You could wrap and surround him like this, and then he's in more of a problem. So there's many options. And if he is going this way and trying to like really send everything this way, right, all of his units are going this way, trying to like hop over, his rook's moving down, and he's trying to take this like green flank right here, that does leave a lot of space for us. It leaves our entire deployment. It leaves us this whole green space to our side. It also gives us this whole like economy here. Tons of space. Our opponent is very limited to like this, the queen down to like 4, right? This like little area. It's very small. And some armies in 40k do want to play this small corner. Nick Nanavati is special for this. He loves playing the Nick Nanavati corner, right? What he means by that is he really tries to, so if I just move this in an order, right? If I just start moving pieces around, what he really tries to do is essentially, he really wants to protect everything. I'm just gonna do this like really quickly. Don't care. And then he's really trying to protect everything and be really strong, right? The triple pawn defense, whatever, and then we're trying to defend everything that we want. Let me just do this. This actually should be castled. I'm gonna fix this in a second. Oh my god. Playing chess. Okay. Okay, cool. There. Okay, so look at this board state right here. Optimally, we would want to push this up, so let's just do that. Okay, this right here, this corner is kind of our defense. You can move these pieces back in 40k because game of inches. In this game, it's a game of squares, so you can't really do that. But look at what I've just done. I haven't really moved my units forward. I'm not attacking my opponent. What I'm really doing is defending this my own little like corner right here. Most of my big pieces are now open to attack. So if you can imagine that this is a nice tank in the corner, it's targeting the middle of the map this way and a nice flank, right? If you go to this Warhammer map and we look at the chessboard, so it would be like all the way in this corner. If I just grab a gladiator, let's just pretend that it's either in this corner right here and it's kind of shooting down this angle here. Anything that comes into the center, it's got it covered. Like this way, right? Anything over here, it's got it covered, even up here. So if you want, you can put a pawn. Let's just get like, let's use a single model. So we got a pawn unit right here. It's hanging out. Realistically, what you want to do is like, let's say there's a pawn unit here. Let's say there's another pawn unit up here. And let's say there's another pawn unit on this way. Okay. So we go back to our chessboard and we realize that, okay, we got our 3 pawns. We got everything going. And if you recognize here that there's 3 pawns in the center on the right side, and there's this one single pawn defending this other pawn, right? So the furthest pawn that's on this side, we're going to defend it with another pawn, aka another unit of assault intercessors. So we got our unit of assault intercessors right here. Let's move all these over a little bit to like, I guess we kind of have to keep it here. This one goes up here. This one goes like up here, possibly. Right, so we kind of got these 3 different pawns. This is not 100% accurate, but just bear with me that this is how it's gonna kind of go for the most part. So what happens is if something comes out to shoot this pawn from over here, our bishop, not our bishop, sorry. So our bishop is angled to the left side here. So anything that comes to attack is this thing. Our gladiator lance is going to swing into it. Now on this side, obviously in Warhammer, our bishop can attack multiple areas. But let's go back to the chessboard and pull up our queen. Our queen is protecting this pawn, which means it's our second gladiator tank. Okay. Anything that shows up to swing into this intercessor right here, this gladiator tank is going to pop it by just looking at it and shooting it up the board. Okay, so it's going to stand back here. It's completely safe. Anything that shoots it from across the map, the gladiator tank is going to move up and shoot down this line of fire. Anything that moves up to charge it is going to get shot by the gladiator tank or the gladiator tank. Now again, it's not going to be 1-to-1 because it's 40k compared to chess. Each piece only has limited ways to attack in chess, but in Warhammer you can attack in a fucking circle. Alright, and then we're gonna go to our rook. Our rook is defending this pawn. Our rook moves in a straight line. So what if we get a nice impulsor that's hard hitting, etc., and we kind of line it up back here. Let's move the gladiator tank like this way and move this one back here, right? I'm just trying to make it equal to this, but yeah. Okay, cool. So our gladiator tank can move all the way here and shoot down that angle. This one can shoot, everything's good. So now you can, the main thing you can understand is like we're kind of taking over this side of the map. And on the chessboard, if you look at it, we're also taking over the same amount of space, right? It's about halfway up the board and it's heavily concentrated on the right side. Same thing on this way. We're about halfway up the board and we're heavily concentrated on the right side. Anything comes up this flank, we can attack it. Anything attacks our pawns, we can attack it, and so on. So this is what I mean by board state, okay? And when I'm going to go into armies soon, it's going to be that some armies want to play the corner. Some armies want to play even more defensively, like if I can just do this actually. So right, all of our pawns would move back, or maybe we move like this. Yeah, we kind of move like that, where all of our pawns are blocking this angle right here, and then everything is safe. The pawns are protecting each other, and we limit our space. We limit all these guys one space backwards, and we take over even less space. What does that look like? It looks like this. We're not going to touch the wall because our opponent has guns that can shoot us, so our space is being limited. Maybe our opponent has advantage charge. We don't want to get charged, so we kind of have to stand not next to the wall. We have to stand all the way back here, that if our opponent does come after us, he is going to be under attack. Okay. And then we're still having these guys back here. If our opponent wants to shoot us, he cannot shoot us from this angle. He has to either come all the way out into the open, or he has to come down this flank and shoot us down this way, right? So we can leave this intercessor squad right here. And what you'll notice is that, look at this. If I get rid of this pawn, I mean, maybe I shouldn't get rid of it, but this pawn is being protected by this pawn. This pawn is being protected by this pawn and this pawn. And then our pieces, right, our queen piece still defending this pawn. And then we go back, and the rest of our pieces are also defending everything. Rook, knight defending the middle piece, bishop defending that one. Right, our knight could be anything. It could be reserves that comes in to counterattack. Let's say we have the lion, or our opponent's really aggressive, so we have a biologist unit with rapid ingress and our eradicators. Right, it's something I do against aggressive armies. I can allow my opponent to charge me, attack me, but then all of a sudden my knight gets to bounce onto the map, hop onto the map, and come into position off the board edge and take out their Salaxi, their Bellicor, their tanks or Angron, whatever it is. So you can consider knights to be reserves if you want, however you want to kind of put it up there, but essentially you can have a unit here or here, or just because the knight jumps around, I just said reserves. Okay, you can actually just have it going places and attacking from weird angles. Okay, cool. Awesome. Other armies play differently. If I reset this board state, so we talk about playing the corner here. Some armies like to play for the center. Playing for the center is very simple, right? You move your impulsor to the center, you move your intercessors behind the wall, and now your army is very much staged to be attacking the middle of the board, and your gladiator tank is trying to hold the flanks and provide attacks on the left and the right side. If your opponent comes up this side, it can move out, shoot. If your opponent comes all the way over the wall, you can shoot them. If your opponent comes onto the objective, you can attack the center and trade. This is the very classic trading style. This is what most of you guys play in Votan, where you just kind of control the mid board, and so on. Now in 40k, as you can see, these objectives are not the same. Okay, one side is pushed up, one side is not. When you're trying to rotate, this will be our rotation side. This is our primary objective we want to control over. We do not want to fight over this because our opponent has great defense capabilities on this side. Now, it also works in chess this way. Why? Because our queen and the side that our king is at means, let's compare this. A king can castle to the right side a lot easier than the left side. Because this is true, we can compare it to this ruin right here. This ruin is a lot easier for us to rotate towards and be defensive than this side. This side would take a lot more setup. That setup requirement takes more skill, takes more pieces and play, essentially. And then, of course, we have our queen piece, right? If you guys play Votan, recently you guys have, the more you play the 10-man bricks, the more I tell you that this queen piece, which is your 10-man Terminator unit, doesn't need to attack your opponent's base, doesn't need to attack the right side. It doesn't have to come where your army is. It doesn't even have to come in the center of the board, right? It can go into these locations, but if your army is already positioned extremely strong on the right side, and this is your weak side, but your opponent's attacking it, you can use your queen piece to effectively put a big hole on this objective, or to push upwards and cause your opponent to stall out. In a chess game, if your opponent has to stall out this location because he's encountered a problem he didn't foresee, now he has to basically move his pieces upwards to protect the knight or protect something that's under attack. So if the queen does attack the knight, the pawn will kill the queen, but the queen's in no threat essentially because the 10-man Terminator unit is quite durable. It's not going to die in one go. Or we're going to just sacrifice the queen and proceed to try and put our opponent in a checkmate position by being a turn ahead on this side, because we gain momentum and tempo. Okay, so because they have to interact with our queen on this side, or they will lose pieces, or be in a really bad game state where they will ultimately lose, we can now keep developing or pushing our pieces on the right side further up the board. What does this look like in 40k? It looks like the fact that our opponent cannot take us off primary. He cannot commit more resources from his side of the board onto our side of the board, so we will continue to score secondaries and primary and win the game that way. And to deal with the queen piece, he has to actually send something and attack it, but that means he probably isn't getting onto this location here because the queen is defending a space on the board, okay? Is defending this. In terms of Wotan, our 10-man Terminator unit is defending this. Okay, cool. We got that out of the way. Now that everything is kind of secured, everything is kind of talked about, the thought process and stuff, I'm going to talk about list building a little bit and how this goes into the fundamentals before I even touch on how different armies play and all this, okay? And we'll go into why I have this list out here and why a lot of my test lists look like this. Okay, going into the list building. Now that we have understood that we need board position and movement consistency, okay? And we don't need a knight, we don't need 10-man Wotan Terminators, we don't need 3 hecatons. Like, the units are just there as tools to carry out the job we want them to be done, okay? That's all they're there for. What we actually need to come up with, and the understanding of how armies play fundamentals and what I teach, how do they differ? To understand this entire concept, what we have to actually get down into is the fact that list building and what goes into it. What goes into it is, number one, thinking about what units you want to use and how do you want to use it. Going back to chess, if you love to use rooks, if you love to use knights, if you love to use bishops, if you love to use queens, okay, or if you love to use pawns, doesn't matter, right? Rochester likes more pawns in his list. More amateur players love to have more bishops and queen pieces. I personally love to have the kings in my list more often, and you might be like, what is a king piece? A king piece is essentially, it's not a queen piece. A queen piece is 10-man Terminators or something that hits really hard and wins you games. The king piece is something that nets everything together. It's Gilliman, essentially. The king can take out units. It is usually very slow, very costly, and is a crucial piece that nets everything together. So there are strategies in chess that utilize the king to be a essential piece to keep everything locked up in the middle of the board. It is also a piece that, like, it can defend multiple areas. Of course, you want to keep the king safe in chess. Same thing in 40k. You want to keep Gilliman safe, or the lion safe, or a big knight safe. Right, your Primarch safe, etc. But it's about, if you're going to bring one of those pieces in 40k, if you want to build a list around your king, it's a very, like, awesome style, but it's very difficult because your king is kind of what's controlling everything. If your king dies, you kind of lose the game right there and there. And sometimes, like, you know, they call the king's sacrifice, right? The whole play is called the king's sacrifice and whatnot. Same thing in 40k. When I use Gilliman, I have to sacrifice Gilliman to proceed to move up the board. I will put my king into a dangerous position, and my opponent will be like, oh, he's moving his king forward. That's really strange, right? It's much easier for me to take out his king piece, and I'll be focused on trying to take it out. But when I do run Gilliman, when I do run the lion, my king piece is moving forward. Now, it's not traveling all the way across to my opponent's side of the board to die, but it is taking up space, and it is now protecting my pawns, and it's another piece that's added to the board. Usually when you play chess, or you play, like, you know, buffing units, it stays in the back and doesn't do anything. So you're kind of playing 100 points down, or you're getting CP out of Azrael. You're not really using Azrael. Same thing with Gilliman. You have 350 points, your list is a lot. Now it's 285. But if you start using it, yes, your opponent wants to take out Gilliman, but if you build your list around it and move the pieces around it, your pieces can protect your king, and your king can protect your pieces. So it increases like the type of builds you can do. And it's very unique and very cool. You have to be more careful, more risky, but it's a strategy nonetheless, right? So it's another wild style of playing. Your buffing piece right there. It's very powerful, but your opponent has to crack the shell somehow, and it's your job to not allow it to be cracked. This is why it goes to list building. So in chess, before you start moving your pieces in chess and like, oh, I'm going to move this, you understand, do you like to use knights and teleport around the map? Do you like to have long range gun lines that shoot one way or another? Do you like to have deep striking units that shoot very hard, or like bishops? Do you like the queen pieces that like to just, they can take out multiple units, but they're very expensive, and you don't want to lose them, etc. Right? So this is the first thing you want to come down to, fundamentals, because based on this is going to be your board position. If you don't understand what pieces you're trying to play for or what you're trying to bring, your board position is going to look like trash. Okay? So once you understand what type of list you want to play, what type of pieces you want to be playing around, take those pieces and then visualize how is it going to look. And I'm going to go through some examples here in a second. And then start adding in pieces to complement your board state. Okay? When I mean how's it going to look, I mean how's your board state going to look. If you're bringing long range guns and you don't have knights, right? You don't have any deep striking in your list. You only have fuck. Okay, let's kill this one off. Let's, oh fuck. Okay, there we go. We have no deep strikes in our list. We only have these long range guns. We can either shoot off the sides, long range diagonally from reserves, or we have these tanks that kind of move left and right and they shoot downwards like this, right? Makes sense? Makes sense. Awesome. So we have 2 tanks in reserves, and we have 2 other tanks that are really durable, like rooks, really hard to interact with, can shoot very long range, and it's really good. And then we have a queen piece which can attack multiple different areas. It moves pretty fast, and it's quite hard to kill. And then we have a bunch of pawns to kind of play the map for us and go on. So our board position is going to very much look like can I move my piece? Okay, it's gonna look like that. Like, look, we're already starting to build up our board position. Our rook is now at a flank to attack the left side, all the way across in the middle of the board, just like on here. If our gladiator tank showed up, maybe not on this terrain, but if it showed up essentially like, let's say on the left side instead of the right side, if this is flipped over, I guess I can't really flip it over. But if it was flipped over and we're doing this on the left side or the right side, and these were like the other way, if we just delete this actually completely, right? Our rook is taking this good board position. It can shoot down this whole flank, and it can also shoot down to the left to the center of the board. Okay? Our bishop came in from deep strike, and it can only attack that space there. So we kind of have 2 different tanks. In this case, we have 2 gladiator lancers that are aiming down and to the left and right. Again, remember that 40k you can shoot everything. Chess you cannot, but this coming from reserves, this was start on the board. Okay, awesome. So let's go back to here, and then you start to see that, okay, we're playing this side of the map. Again, we're playing the right side. So our board position really wants to look like this, where we have some units taking up the map, and we have our queen piece in the center, and we have this, and we have our king moving away towards the middle right here. Awesome. And then on the other side, boom. Okay, This is our deep strike reserve threat. Now, I want you to pay attention to the board state. Again, we have a board state where if you compare it to 40k, okay, if you compare it to 40k, let's move this guy like slightly back. Let's start putting in some pawns. This is going to be the last one I do of this. Hopefully it's really informative for you guys to really understand the game. And hopefully the chess tool is really helpful. We have, right here, we have this tank. This tank is all of a sudden our screen, right? If you think about it in chessboard, this is our screen, this is our defensive piece, it's defending our bishop from anything, and it's also defending this area, but also it's going to die first if anything attacks it, but then we're going to trade with our pawn. Okay, in certain armies you can trade your gladiator tanks or your transports, and this is why it's harder for people to understand that a Sagittar can be a screen, it can be a trash unit. It just depends on the match and what you want to do with it in the board state. So here's our our jump back intercessors. They're defending our queen piece. In this case, it would be like, usually it's Gilliman, but let's just get Calgar up in here. Let's make Calgar a little bit bigger so we can kind of compare him to everything. Or actually, let's just get the entire brick. So this is our queen piece right here. This giant unit is our queen piece. Our queen piece is bubble wrapped by 3 units around it. Right? So this piece is right here. In 40k, realistically, it would be like in this area, give or take. So let's just kind of put it somewhere over here. Our opponent can not really interact with it. And then let's use jump pack intercessors to screen out the front so that our demons can't charge it. Let's put out another unit of scouts on this side so people can't get to it. And then we have a third pawn. We technically only have 2, but let's put an impulsor in the back defending this unit here or back here. And now we kind of have this 3 pawn formation like we do here, right? 3 pawns. 1, 2, 3. This angle right here. If we want to really make it like this, we can to make the line. But this 3 pawn formation, and then our queen piece is in the middle of this, and everything's fine. Ignore this pawn to the right of my queen, but if you want to, you can 100% do that. We just don't have enough space on this map. Or we move our rook back, and we put in another unit of screens over there. Let's say it's infiltrators. It doesn't really matter, but hopefully you guys get the idea here. Okay, so this is how our board state is going to look, and our opponent's going to have a very hard time interacting with us because he wants to charge our Eradicator unit. He cannot with his melee army. If he's going to shoot us, then, you know, my Calgar unit's pretty damn tough. He doesn't want to shoot his anti-tank units in here. If he does shoot his anti-tank units into my rook or my bishop, my Eradicator unit will advance and shoot his tanks off the map. So he has to be respectful of my queen, having threat everywhere. If he tries to take me on this side, this is why I have this bishop here, and moves to this flank, and it starts attacking as well, which would be our next gladiator tank. All of a sudden, if our opponent wants to attack us from this angle, or the center, our tank can slide up the board, or let's pretend it goes into this position. It can now attack down the middle. If there were no containers, it can attack this area, anywhere around here, and really back us up from a long range. Okay, and it's again screening out the center of the board, not in the center, but right before it, which is, I guess, a little bit more further up. But in this case, it will be back here. Okay, maybe on this objective, just holding it and also providing extra firepower down these areas. Okay, enough of this. It's probably boring for you guys. Hopefully not. But that's how this looks. Okay. I'm not going to go through every single example, but that's the gist of it. Just went through like 2. So, again, understand the pieces you want to play around. Understand how it's going to look on the map. And then add in pieces, right? Because if you think about it, we didn't even talk about these pawns, this pawn, this pawn, this pawn, or this long range gun. We kind of said that it's in our list. What is it doing? How do we want to use it? We didn't talk about that. Do we want to bring it all the way here? Right? Do we want to slide the rook super far over to protect this side? Do we want to slide it all the way here to protect this pawn? What do we want to do? Okay? We haven't really utilized these pieces. We just said that the bishop is going to come from reserves, probably attack this flank. So that's one thing. 2 tanks in reserve. But then this bishop that's shooting long range, is this our second hecaton that's just sitting on the left side, holding down the angle? So our opponent is not rushing down in the open to get shot, has to kind of step behind ruins one by one, and wait for reserves and stuff like this. And what are we doing with our pawns? Do we need more pawns? Do we take out all 3 of these pawns and add in 3 more rooks? Because then we have 3 tanks on this side, which becomes almost like a gun line and guard, right? If I have this castle formation up here, but then we all of a sudden have 3 more rooks on this side, that might be getting rid of these 4 pawns that I have, but I have 3 more tanks, or 2 more tanks that are effectively, if a pawn is 100 points in 40k, that means a rook is 200 points, which means that 2 pawns equal a rook, and you bring it over. 2 pawns equal a rook, you bring it over. We're left with 3 pawns, 3 rooks, 2 bishops, a king, and a queen piece, and then that's it, right? So very important, very, very important. So let's go and recap this on this paper real quick. Okay, so list design. Okay, very important. Pick what pieces you want to use. Style, guns, melee, etc. Long range. Not really. Style, guns, melee, etc. Think of chess pieces. Okay. And then we're gonna have to look at the fact that in this example we didn't run any knights, aka we didn't run any like teleporting or deep striking units. We just had our main pieces. And then we talked about that there's multiple different styles. King equals Golemin, castle style. Queen equals Votan Termes or game ending. Buff slash build around. Okay, Votan Termes equal game ending pieces, very expensive but very powerful. And then we also have knights equal teleport units slash deep strike precision. Then we have, because knights effectively jump from across the map and defend pieces that are in the open very effectively, aka rapid ingress, deep strikes, inceptors, whatever it is. They can kind of attack enemy pieces from anywhere on the map. Indirect is another way of abusing it, but that's a different case. Indirect doesn't really exist in chess, although knights are, I guess, the closest. Okay, so, and then we have pawns, trash, screens, control the board, usually. Okay, and then we have bishop, our reserves, firepower. These bishops can also be fast moving melee units, okay? And rook is long range gun line gun unit. Okay, awesome. So that's how we kind of summed that up. Now let's get into Death Guard and how every single army uses different things and other armies. So let's start out with Space Marines. Okay, this list is a mixed bag, which means I'm playing a standard game of chess. I have 3 tanks, This army likes to just play classic 40k. Very, very flexible. I can castle up like this. I can pivot to the right side as normal and try to attack my opponent by getting behind them. I can all of a sudden start running away from that side and really throw my opponent into a weird situation where I might overwhelm them on this side if they misdeploy. I might also have enough units that I understand if my opponent has all damaging units and nothing that is gonna be screens. My opponent wants to play for this objective. What I can do is just say, okay, here's all of my tanks pointed right at you in the open. And now we're going to play this game of, you want to come for this objective, I'm going to throw out a single pawn, and you're going to use your knights, bishops, and your queen pieces to kill it. And then all my guns are going to knock you the fuck off the map, and you're going to lose the game. Okay? Do not try to do this at home, you know, as I say, because this is advanced. Once you understand this concept, then you can go try it and see like how far in the water you are and so on. Also, your list kind of has to be able to do it in the first place, or just understand that your opponent has less resources. When your opponent has less resources, it's more effective to kind of ram your guns towards the most of his army and then shoot, and it counteracts the main thing that I teach, which is to rotate the map. Okay, is to pick a flank, control that side, your opponent gets the other side, and then there's, okay, cool. The next part, let me spawn another list in here, and let's talk about Votan. No, let's talk about CSM, because this one's going to be the indirect one, and it's going to be very, very interesting. Okay, so this is Liam Waisel's CSM list. How does this list want to play? Even though it's actually similar to this list that I have right here, it has Predator tanks, it has essentially another Gladiator Lancer because it's going to be my 2-shot last cannon gun. It's got some indirect. I don't have indirect here, but I do have JPI, which can go behind the wall and charge something instead of Warp Talons. And then it has a bunch of characters, just like I do here. I don't have a queen piece in this list. There's no actual queen. Oh, I guess the Phoebus Bile with the 10 chosen will be the queen piece. Right, this will be the queen piece. Very durable, hits pretty decently hard, and stuff. Cultists are just sticky. But this list really, what it's trying to do is understand your opponent's board state, understand your own board state, and then put your opponent on a clock of, if you have a lot of trash and you want to play the, I'm going to send a single unit out to go do secondaries and trade. Well, I'm not going to trade with you. I'm just going to activate my obliterators, and I'm going to shoot indirectly and kill your unit without moving up the board. So what this unit really, really likes to do, same thing with Gilliman lists and stuff like this, is have these bishops behind walls, ready to shoot, or just shooting long range. Your opponent can't really interact with them, and they're ready to move out and kind of get shots off. But then it has these obliterator units that are centered around the middle of the board or on sides. It can be either way. And instead of interacting with your opponent, they say, we're not going to move our pieces around. We're going to stay put, control all of the map, not just one side or the other. We're going to control everything. And we're going to gain a big points lead by not on the scoreboard. We're going to gain a points lead in terms of how many units we have. Okay? So we're going to gain 200 points every single turn in our favor by the obliterator shooting your units off the map. Right? Let's just say 100 points. In 2 turns, I'll have a 200 point lead, which means I'll be playing 2,000 points versus your 1,800 points. And then on the next turn, I'm going to hit you again and score another, let's say, 200 points in total on this turn. So now you're playing 1,600 points versus my 2,000 points. Now if you trade into me, because I only had to kill 200 points of your unit on turn 3, you're only going to put so much into it, or I might send a more durable unit into your army, and all of a sudden, whatever you send into that more durable unit is going to cost a lot, and I'm gonna take it out of the picture, and you're gonna be down. Even if I don't trade up into you, if I trade equal or even like similar, I'll lose a 300 point unit, but you already were 400 points down. So if you lose like 200 point unit, you're playing 600 points down. You're not gonna really be in a good spot to kind of come back from that, especially since you ran out of your trash units early into the game, and now you gotta use your main units to play the rest of it. And CSM is like very, very good at punching up, and also very, very good at being semi-durable or having lots of tricks, which is where the rest of this comes into play. Now, unlike in chess, in 40k, what this list does in the first couple turns, and you're like, well, if he's hitting back and shooting me indirectly, he's not scoring points, and you'll be correct for that, except for the matter that what we can do is use reactive moves in this list. We can move out to the middle of the board. We can ask our opponent to find a certain angle to come shoot at us. At that point, we'll just react, move back behind the wall, and be perfectly safe. We can abuse rhinos to do this for us as well. We can also create space by doing this. And we can also... yeah, that's kind of... we can also use like armor contempt, smoke, and so on. And if our opponent does trade into us, well, everything in our army is very, very cheap. Chaos Rhino, right? It's almost like a pawn plus. If you can make a pawn plus in 40k, it essentially means that either the pawn hits way harder, which is a very good trash unit, or like for example Wotan bikes, they're a pawn plus because they're a pawn because they're cheap trash units, but they teleport on the maps. They're actually like a bishop that can teleport and shoot, come from reserves, and or a knight and get angles, and also they can shoot super far across the map and get into a good position to either screen or to score as secondaries. And they're semi-durable for being T6, 3 and 4 wounds apiece. Their opponent has to put in a certain amount of firepower, not just trash bolter fire. So it takes a pawn plus to kind of get rid of that unit, or something stronger. So that pawn effectively is doing more and more. Even cultists can be considered a pawn plus, but for different reasons. They are very cheap at 50 points, but they're also a 10-man. While most pawn units are in 5-mans and cost about 65, 85 points, cultists are super cheap and are 10-man. But again, this is just a pawn unit, right? Moving on from that, this is how the CSM list plays. It trades very, very effectively into you. It plays very, very slow like a chess game. And it can also create giant opportunities for itself by, you know, forcing you out. And that's something that I haven't really touched on yet. But it's forcing you out. When you play a gambit in chess and you sacrifice your units early, let's use this list for example. We're going to send out a rhino, just advance it to this side of the board. Okay, now you can kill the rhino, but it's going to cost you some anti-tank or grenade and other resources that you might not want to spend. It also can become more durable by smoke, armor contempt. On top of that, if I keep units inside of it, now it's asking you to not only kill the rhino, but also to kill the units inside, which you need to allocate more and more resources. Right? If it's behind a wall and the objective is basically keeping it safe, for example, like over here, if I move the rhino up here, you can shoot it and kill it, but I'm going to drop all my guys behind this wall right here, and you can't interact with it. If you do want to interact with it, you got to come all the way out here, charge me, or move on to this terrain piece and shoot me. Okay? Which means I'm sacrificing 90 points from 75 points is like 165. 165 points, but you're going to have to use 2 assets to kill this thing. And when that happens, my para tank will take out your tank, and then my small tiny units will kill this unit, and I'll gain a point advantage. Again, it's all about point advantage and gaining board control. Now you can, if I do this, you start losing resources, you start losing board control, and so on, which is important. I think I lost my train of thought again right there because I was talking about something keyword, but I forgot, so I'm just gonna move on. Oh yeah, pulling your opponent out and enforcing aggressive plays. This is one of the reasons why it's really difficult to play into me, or a style of list like this is very, very good. Um, and it's playing the fundamentals of the game exceptionally well, and it's bringing all the fundamentals together. A very strong board state. It's taking into account of what pieces do I want to build around and what do I need, what does my army look like on the map, and I can flex it by adjusting it game by game, by using reserves, deep strikes, starting on the board, using my rhinos, using inside the rhinos, and everything kind of can hit harder by using pacts. And I can use reactive moves. I can use durable units if I need to. I can really control the mid board later on with Chosen, and my opponent's not going to be able to kill 10 3-up save, 3 wound models with T5 with 2 blanks, and then a reviving character. Which another thing I want to talk about real quick is characters that come back to life, or units that come back to life, are extremely powerful in this game, especially in 10th edition, I think, personally. Why is that the case? Because it's just trading. If I move this unit out and you want to kill it, well, when you kill it, I just come back to life on a 2+, and I still hold the objective. Not only do I get a score lead, you don't trade anything into me, and then I can just proceed to run it away, or I can proceed to bring out my tanks and kill your tanks that shot into me, right? So I get a score lead, I get a points lead. It's a 2-for-1, and you effectively did nothing. It's a rare rule that's not on everybody, but it's another reason why if you do play Guilliman, you do have to abuse that. And if you look at this list, it has Huron Blackheart that can come back to life, and Lucius the Eternal that can come back to life. So he's really doubling down on everything. 2 long-range tanks, 2 rhinos with troops, 2 obliterators, 2 units that have revives, and then this unit has a reactive move built in, and then a 1 CP reactive move. So you can see it's 2 of everything, very much like chess, very fundamentally based on like very conservative, and not going too deep into one thing or another. And then it has a good amount of pawns, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, these aren't pawns, but yeah, you get what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of pawns, and then 1 chosen squad and 1 cultist squad. So this actually has 6 pawns in the list. Okay. That's how this CSM style list wants to play. That's how Indirect wants to play. It kind of wants to keep shooting you back, getting a huge points advantage, and being very effective trading. That's how the Space Marine list wants to play. It's very versatile, very well balanced. Same thing with this list. But this list adds Indirect to the case and adds tricks by reactive moves, blanking damage, a durable unit like this, Anvil, which is essentially the queen piece. In the other unit, it was more of a damage unit. And in the Space Marine list, in this unit, it's more of a pseudo damage, but also mostly about durability and holding objectives down. Okay, let's go down a next style of list. Let's talk about not greater demons, but sure. Let's talk about greater demons really quickly because this one's pretty simple. What do greater demons want to do? Okay, pretend these are all different greater demons or a keeper style list or Slaxy. What are demons trying to do? It's quite simple. What they want to do is realize that they're only durable for so long. They have 5 queen pieces in their list, and the queen pieces takes a real amount of firepower and also deals a real amount of damage to your opponent. Now, whether a queen pays for a pawn or 2 pawns, that's up to in the game and your opponent's skill and your skill and what other tech pieces you have around it or what you can do with it, right? But ultimately, at some point, a queen piece has to be traded for a pawn, but it's still good for the demon player because he has 5 queens. He can afford to trade 1 or 2 queens away, if not multiple queens, as long as he wins the game at the end. So demons, their primary goal is to limit the amount of time you have dealing damage to their queen pieces and interacting with them. At the same time, using the 2 or 3 pawns they have to score the secondaries and stalling the game out. Why do they want to stall the game out? Because as you get later into the game, the queens have more value. They have way more wounds, they have way more durability, they have way more damage than all your units, and later into the game, they don't gotta worry about doing as much secondary and scoring. They gotta worry about killing your opponent and not dying themselves, and your opponent has to deal with these giant behemoths in front of them. So what demons try to do is effectively control primary by denying your opponent primary any chance they can get, and then ultimately, because your opponent cannot kill this OC5 demon, they will hold the primary and start tallying up points. Okay, and when the demon dies, hopefully another one will really take its place, and they can even send 2 demons on one objective to really overwhelm you. And if you see a demon army doing this to you, you're being overwhelmed on like your flank or your home objective that you're trying to defend. It can be really annoying, and the best way to go about beating this is to have more trash in your list, but also you need a stat check, aka you need enough units in your army that can actually take out the queen pieces, which it's a skill list by design, and these lists are trying to overwhelm you by the fact of dice, and you don't have enough units or damage to actually get rid of them. These things are generally weak to having OC battles. If you verse AdMech or a big horde army, these lists lose to them because 5 queens are not going to take out 20 pawns. You're just going to lose. Eventually the pawn will kill all your queens, and you'll lose efficiency. And struggle into MSU. But at the same time, MSU does struggle into killing a bunch of greater demons, right? So it's MSU style of damage dealing, or MSU style of scoring and trash units like Grey Knights, or are you bringing a lot of OC2, OC3 units that can actually hold objectives and run up the board, right? If it's 10-man OC2, like a lot of cultists, they're going to give demons a hard time by just going up onto the objective and denying them. And of course, demons will try to stand at the edge of the objective, so you have to charge them to get onto the objective, or move block you so you literally cannot fit your base onto the objective, or not as many models as you need to out OC them. So that's how demons play. They kind of just charge you. The other option how they play, and this is also Necrons with monoliths, is the whole teleporting and shooting style. So it is a castle style of list, and what happens is they pick up Be'lakor, they pivot it to this side of the map, they pick up the Lord of Change, they bring it over here, and now these 2 units are going to shoot towards the center of the map or something on this side and pick up your assets. When that happens, they're lone op and they're defensive or just really durable, and you cannot kill them in one go. So over the course of 2 or 3 turns, they will make up their points. Once they gain a points lead and their units are about to die, they'll either move the monolith super far back, keep it for late game because it's on like 2 wounds, and try to get rid of your other anti-tank assets, or they will push it forward, do as much damage as possible, force you to deal with it, and so on, while overwhelming you, right? And then they're gonna do this typical demon style of like, here's everything I have on turn 3 or 4, can you deal with this? If you cannot, I'm gonna start scoring 10 and 15s on primary, and I'm gonna table you next turn, because on my turn 4 or 5, I'm gonna just have access to your whole army, and it's gonna be the end of the game. So that's how those armies play. Okay, let's go moving down another one. Let's talk about, this is not it. Where's the triple repulsor list? This is not it. Let's talk about, nope. Trying to find. TTS is so slow, man. That's why I hate TTS. Like being a YouTuber and then having like editing of real life things where you just like cut it and break it down would be so much better. And just so anyone's wondering, I haven't forgotten about the fact of like, how does fundamentals apply to this? I will get to that. I mean, I already kind of covered it, but yeah. Okay, so Drukhari. This is what I want to get to, because the other ones were like pretty quick to do. Okay, This is an army that is your mass MSU, multiple units, all over the place, extremely quick, and also has damage on basically everything. Everything has damage, everything has speed, everything has um, a cheap cost relatively, and there's lots of gimmicks like sticky objectives, transports, long range firepower, close range melee, fast moving melee, teleporting, shooting, teleporting with rapid ingress to melee somebody, rapid ingressing to move 20 inches. Okay, so this like really abuses a really strong player, and takes like all their skills into account. So let's talk about the fundamentals and how this list uses it. So one of the fundamentals I talk about is rotating the map. Okay. Okay, Drukhari does that. Why does Drukhari want to do this? Because they want to stay safe behind buildings. Awesome. Perfect. This is also why they bring transports. Because the transport is essentially a building. They don't mind losing a transport. It's kind of hard to kill. Not too difficult, but it can be. And if you do kill them, you still got to kill all the guys inside of it, which can be hard. But because the transport moves so goddamn fast, they can really just deploy the units on the board. Now, how does army like to play on the table? Well, there's multiple ways. One of the ways is that it sends out missiles, aka 5-mans, maybe 2 5-mans, because it has so many units, to go and keep you back and move block you, okay? But also to trade with you. The other thing that it has to do is abusing the fact that it has all of these transports. That if you want to pop it, you're kind of activation locked. If I put all these units on these objectives, okay, let's say there's three transports. You're not gonna have the firepower on this side to kill all the transports, out OC me, or to kill the things that are inside the transports. It's gonna be very difficult, or it's gonna ask of you to deploy your entire army and bring it out and like 600 points your army to take out all of this. And even if you do that, sometimes I can just maybe react, move this guy backwards. I can let this one die and deploy the units forward to move block any further charges. And then I sacrifice that unit and the units inside. And if you destroy this raider, I can disembark my units over here behind this wall where it cannot be shot at, right? So ultimately you kind of allow me to move this guy backwards or forwards and hide. You shot one of my raiders down, the guys inside of it, but I still hold the objective and score my points. So it really abuses the fact that you are activation locked because you cannot kill all these things at once. Even though every single thing in Drukhari has 1 wound pretty much, everything is super killable until you get into the more durable units. Everything's super durable, everything's super cheap, so you never really punch up, never trade really effectively. You kill them super quick. You just throw a grenade and like you can possibly kill 5 models in a whole unit just with a grenade stratagem or a tank shock. Super easy to kill, but really hard to have enough units in your list that can not be activation locked and just be like, oh, I don't have enough things to actually kill your raider, then kill the guys inside because you're either too far that I don't have 48-inch guns or 36-inch guns, or you have fight first so I can't even charge you once I do pop you out of the transport, or I can't deal with the transport in the first place because I only have a single Gladiator Lancer pop looking at it, and you can roll a 6-up save, you can pop smoke on it, and all of a sudden I might not kill it, right? I might kill it, I might not kill it, I don't know. Most likely it will kill it, but who knows. Same thing with the Venoms. And everything here kind of does damage. And MSU armies really like to add this plus this plus this kills this. Okay? This is where the fractions come into play. A lot of the Eldar units are at a damage or a fraction of 1 out of 6 or 2 out of 6. Nothing is 3 out of 6, really. Nothing is 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 6. Everything is 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, sometimes 3 out of 6, like Scourges, or maybe the shooting tank that they have, right? So, or maybe Incubi in melee combat, they can go from 2 out of 6 to maybe 4 out of 6 if you take a 10-man or more, okay? So everything is very, very different for this army. Let's go into rotation and stuff like this. So we want to rotate. The army does that. We want to create space by moving our move blocking. So if we move on this side, we move this army forward. We scout move forward, then we move it super far up. Drukhari can easily get into our deployment line, just like this. Turn 1 and move block our army. What does this create? A ton of space for our units to move up the board. Everything here can move up the board, even into the open, because our opponent cannot interact with it. Even if our opponent does shoot the Venoms, they cannot charge anything inside of it because their units are move blocked over here. It can also create problems where we can send most of our army on this side, interact over here. We can slide a single Venom on this objective and sticky the objective, because Venom's special rule is that the Cabalite Warrior, Cabalite Warrior's special rule is if the unit are inside the Venom, they can still sticky objectives. So essentially in Votann, your warriors could stay inside Sagittars and still sticky objectives, which is very powerful and very good in Drukhari. Right? So this guy's behind the wall or in the open somewhere, holding this point. Hard to kill with -1 to hit. Maybe there's no guns that can move out to shoot it. This unit has move blocked everything on this location. And then because we know that in this weird dynamic of a game, our opponent just can't attack our objective. We've kind of already rotated so fast. Like if this is turn 1, we've already entered our opponent's base. Right? Normally in normal games you're doing this on turn 3. But with the speed that you have, which is why when I teach you guys rotation, and I brought up the fact that this is important because fast armies can do this so blindly fast, you won't have a chance to respond. It's this case right here with Drukhari. And then you can actually have way more assets as a Drukhari player on this side of the map. Right? We can still have the 3 gladiator tanks aiming down their guns. We can have 1 raider in the open taking a pot shot. And then we can have like Venoms all on this objective, having lots of OC, and our opponent's gonna be very dumbfounded because he can't kill all of this. It's like impossible, right? Unless he somehow world leaders can advance a charge. But if they want to do that, we can always just send our Reaver jet bikes and be like, oh look, here's another move block. We just use another super fast mobile unit to move block you, so you can't advance and charge our army. And you don't have guns, you're not gonna be killing the Reavers. Okay, and now they're stuck. They're stuck back here. They can't interact with us, and they're being pressured super hard on this side. But at the same time, their objective that they're trying to rotate towards is being completely taken over. Now this is advanced. If you play Drukhari, you'll understand this. But if you play other armies, eventually you also understand this idea. This comes way later. Do not try to like just start doing this with Votann. You can do it. Don't start doing it. It's not core to a game of chess. Okay, the core thing of chess is control the middle, have good openings. If you start doing wonky openings, there's a reason why they're wonky and why they're only used in certain games, or why the player who's using it is way more skilled than the opponent, and so it works. Okay, so here comes this other thing, is reserves. This unit very much abuses pockets way more than other armies because it can create so much space. So going back to fundamentals and board states, when you're thinking about what board state you can create, and when you're thinking about using reserves to come in and creating pockets, you also have to consider the fact that how much of a pocket can I create, how fast can I create it, and how big is the pocket. If you look at Drukhari right now, this entire area would be my gigantic pocket on turn when an opponent has no way of dealing with it, and they definitely don't want to come that close to me, because not only can I create a giant pocket turn one and move block, I can also advance and charge, or just have super fast mobility that I can get anywhere I want on the map. Like this Venom can go super far, okay, and just disembark and charge. Like I can actually get everything in this Venom to move, disembark, and then charge anything relatively easily on this side of the board, right? That's not something that every army can do. That's something that extremely fast mobile armies can do. So going back to your like board state and creating your army list, think about how much board state can I control. Am I trying to go for this style of like super fast um, board position, having lots of MSU units, lots of move blocking, lots of like gimmicks, or am I trying to go for a really strong castle style in the middle of the board? Am I trying to play a more durable style of Dakari? Most armies in the game, besides Votan, basically do have multiple styles, and any style can work. You can take bad units, you can take C tier units, right? Everything works. If you know me, you know I play with Fire Strike server turrets. I play with aircrafts. I play with Gilliman. I play with a fucking Knight ally. I play with whatever I feel like, whenever I want, because I understand the basis of what I'm trying to create. Your ice cream does not need to be the best ice cream in the world. It just needs to be ice cream, okay? And if you like your ice cream a certain flavor or with chunks of chocolate in it or whatever the fuck you want to talk about and put in there, go ahead and do it. It just has to taste good at the end, and texture and all these things need to be considered. You don't just consider what flavor ice cream is the best or good or why you like it based off the taste. You base it off of like, is it sour? Is it sweet? Is it like vanilla type? Does it have a lot of texture on it? Do you like a lot of sprinkles on it? Do you like to have no texture? Do you like it to be like very soft, right? All these things go into making it, and that same thing with 40k. You really want to be considering what you want to be doing on the map, what goes into making it, how can I make my favorite ice cream flavor work for me. It's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter if it's not the best ice cream flavor in the world. It's what I want to eat at the moment, or what I like currently, or it's a phase, or it'll be fun to try it. Okay, we all have fun eating sour chips sometimes, or sweeter chips or barbecue chips, but we don't eat them all the time. Same thing with Lay's. Sometimes we just like a nice bag of Lay's chips, classic, that's it, right? And those taste really good, just like how we taste water. Water tastes better than pop. Sometimes it just hits differently because we miss it, or our body just like, this is just so good, tastes different, etc. So this is how this army controls the board state. This is how this army likes to utilize this movement very, very effectively. There's tons of pre-measuring and measuring in Drukhari. When I play Drukhari, it takes me a lot longer to pre-measure because I have a lot of units. I have 27 things I have to pre-measure on my side. Then I have to pre-measure your side. And then I have to make sure that, because I have 27 units, that means I have 27 variables I can mix and match to counteract whatever is coming my way. Right? I can mix and match a Scourge unit for anti-tank shooting. I can match it with the Venom. I can match it with a Grenade Strat. I can match it with the different type of units inside the Venoms. I can match it with the Raider if I want a bigger melee threat, or a last cannon, or whatever. Like, there's so much stuff to do. And on top of this, I have to make sure everything is near my Chronos unit, which is essentially my king piece, right? This is a very weak king piece, but this king piece allows my army to function. Without a Chronos and Drukhari would struggle a lot more. And this is what's keeping my army buffs going, is generating the pain tokens. As long as I'm within, I think it's 9 inches of this Chronos model, when I spend a pain token, I'm going to get the pain token back. And so this is a very weak version of something that's a king. It's a linchpin. Essentially what a king piece is a linchpin unit that keeps everything together, and it's played around effectively like a buffing piece. Hellbrood is in CSM, and Votan we don't have any at the moment. But a call could be considered something that if you're running Uther in Votan, you can consider running Uther and using him as a extremely weak king piece that is not even a king piece, but it could be a king piece in the terms of he's going to be generating judgment tokens the whole game. So when I do run Uther, I do consider him to be a army buffing machine that I want to be making the most use out of and putting him in the open, that my opponent has to either kill him or keep taking tokens, and it makes the game that much easier. And if I do run more like troops and stuff, a lot more things are going to have tokens on them. And eventually when Uther is good at the fucking game again, he's going to be a very strong piece, or the Tech Marine that we have, the Iron Master, when he can start blanking damage and buffing up hecatons again. They're going to be a very crucial part of your army. And in some fighting games or some weird games where you control 2 or 3 characters, consider having like 2 Tech Marines or a couple characters that kind of work in unison to buff up the army in total collectively to be a three-way king piece that all three are very useful and very strong, and if you start losing one, you start losing that asset completely. So it's a three-way split of like a ruled kingdom, or however you want to consider that. Okay, so that's how Drukhari play. They use fundamentals to basically create a lot of space and create pockets. They create long-range shooting angles. They create the fundamentals of my army can castle up on one side. My army can play super fast and attack different positions. My army can play around the king of the Chronos. Has to get my pain token generation. And it takes into account, like, do I want 10 incubi? Do I want a lot of small units? I prefer a lot of small units. And it also takes into account that everything is protecting each other, and a lot of these pawns, if I consider all these to be pawns because they're all like rhinos, these 5 pawns will take out like a lot of Terminators if they don't pop AOC or don't have cover, and they will do a lot of damage against like a Blade Guard unit or something quite durable. Like a 6-man unit of bikes will just get picked up by these. Even 12 bikes, if you put 12 O10 bikes, you know, they're going to take a serious damage if the Raiders have units inside of them. All these things can just take everything out. And yeah. So Eldar are very effective at move blocking. They're very effective at playing the map. And you can see, like, I have all these units still that could be on the map, could be in transports, could be anywhere I want. It's insane. They also utilize the king piece of the Chronos. Sometimes you can have 2 Chronoses, which would go into the thing of 2 kings ruling the table. Makes it easier. And they utilize transport gimmicks. They understand that board state is very, very important for Drukhari, because they're not going to win a fight, let's fair. They're not going to win a fight against demons where they're just charging the demons and trying to kill them. They don't have the damage to do that. What they have to do is stall the game, get multiple turns of effectiveness out of the Scourges, right? Get point effectiveness out of them by 5 turns, which means that the Scourge unit costs 120 points. Times that by 5, that's how much this is valued at. This valued at 500 points effectively of effectiveness you're getting out of it, while everything else you're getting 100% effectiveness out of it, because they're all trash units. So they're trade by move blocking, they're trade by scoring, they're trade by taking anti-tank shots, creating space, and trading well. Okay, let's move away from Drukhari. Let's talk about... I'm trying to like go to next by next, because again, I can talk about these armies super in depth in my own coachings. But let's go into let's talk about the classic gunline army real quick. This one's gonna be another quick one. I know one of you, Tony, you're playing the CSM list with like a lot of gun and Abaddon, right? So this is a classic gunline army. All this does is it gets this king piece, which is the Abaddon. Well, this is more so the queen piece, but we have Abaddon. This our king is buffing everything up. The Hellbrute is nearby to also buff things up. We got triple Forge Fiends. They're our gun line. They're going to be on our flank, holding it down around a castle, dealing massive damage to anything that comes across. One of them is going to be in reserves, so that if Abaddon wants to go attack something, he can move up this side, and then we can bring in our reserves in the circle and shoot, or it can come in, hold down this flank like a third Hecaton and deal damage that way. We have a lot of indirect Hellbrutes because everything is standing around this castle and everything is operating around this castle. And then we have like 1 unit in reserves to come in with rapid ingress, or just take away things on the edges or back us up. Then we have Nurglings to really screen out our backfield. This is an old list, by the way, guys. This is not the actual list anymore, so just be aware of that. Then we have a cultist unit on our home objective to sticky it and screen everything out. Then we have 1 unit of 3 Nurglings to essentially either let's just say that we're gonna put it here so we can do actions. Our opponent has to send something out to get rid of them, and they can also move block our opponent, and they also cause your opponent to not charge our obliterators as easily, because they shoot it first then charge. And if they charge, Abaddon is protecting our pawns right here, or our pieces, by being a nice king piece, and heroic interventioning into anything that is threatening us. Okay, awesome. That's how that goes. And then the warp talons are gonna go and like take out a unit on this side, teleport into the air, and come back. So they're gonna stay like basically back here, where they can attack the center with their mass speed, or they can just attack this objective over and over again, stalling the game out, allowing our castle to move up the board very slowly and control the map. And our opponent can't really break through this, and eventually our castle will move towards our opponent and do overwhelming damage in one turn while taking damage back, but our opponent most likely won't be able to take us out. So this is how the board looks like. Just like, look at this, if you look at it, it reminds us of the chessboard, that we were taking the right side, moving towards one side. Of course, you can also, if you're playing on GW or other terrain formats, it doesn't have to be on one side, guys. It can be in the middle, it can be like, you know, very much centered, extremely centered, but like this. But these type of armies that are extremely centered are more so our next army, which is going to be, let's go back here. Let's see if I even have anything to bring to this. I don't think I really do, because I don't have Terminators in any of these lists as far as I remember. So actually, Grey Knights, where's my Grey Knight list? Okay, let's talk about Terminators and like Dread Knights and stuff. So a lot of people like to play durability style lists. What these lists are trying to do, I'm going to show you guys a trick here that's advanced. Let's say you like Terminators, or let's say you like a lot of guns. Let's take our 3 Hecatons, or whatever, Dread Knights in this case. These Dread Knights are hiding behind these walls or away from our opponent's gun range. Awesome. They have good angles, good mobility to get anywhere across the middle and shoot and do damage to our opponent. Our opponent does not want to come out and shoot us, because it will take a bunch of damage in return, and we can teleport up and down and overwhelm a side. Awesome. Or they're just Hecatons, they're really durable, they shoot long range, and our opponent does not want to come near them. Cool. We move a unit here. We create this nice pocket in the center by having a screen here. None of us are going to fight for the middle, because I always tell you guys, maybe not on this terrain, but the middle is death. When the middle is death, this unit is here, that if our opponent puts a unit behind this wall and you measure out 9 inches, it's still here, which means we have lots of space, okay? But if they do come closer, we can send this out to kill them and trade back and forth. But the important part is, if no one's going from the center, we can take something extremely durable, like 10 Terminators, or a tank that has deep strike, or if Votan ever gets a Dreadnought that has deep strike, that'd be sick. And all of a sudden, our opponent's guns are not aimed at the center. You see this? My Dread Knights are not aimed at the center. They're aimed in a position at which they can move and get to the center, or shoot to the center, right? I can shoot towards the center and move and get angles that way. But I don't have guns pointed at it, because if I move my units out, my opponent can then move his units out and shoot me dead. And if I move my units out here, which I'm going to get to in a second. So what I'm going to do is rapid ingress my giant brick of 10 Terminators into the middle of the board, and I'm going to score primary of 15. Why? Because I'm going to hold this objective, or this objective, whichever one, and then I'm going to basically rapid ingress while my opponent is scared of my guns, and my big unit of durable anvil is going to enter the middle. I'm going to score a 5-point lead, could be a 10-point lead, whatever it is, if I string them out. Right, if my opponent does not point any guns at me, is not in a position to charge me, I can string him out and score a nice 15 for myself. And my opponent will be on a very, very bad board state. So this is a trick you can do. To counter this trick, of course, what happens is you have to either move a unit there to die, so your opponent cannot rapid ingress this, aka demons with a 16 deep strike, aka anything with a 3 in deep strike like guard. You really gotta screen it out. Or you put guns pointed at it, so if they do rapid ingress it, like if my opponent is going to rapid ingress a Hecaton on the side, I should probably have guns pointed at it, so if they do that, I can shoot it dead. or hurt it a lot, and so my opponent's not going to do it because they don't want to take free damage. Okay, they want to put a unit in front of me to shoot at. So that's a trick right there. Now, when you do play these tanky units like Black Templars, Terminators, Deathwing Knights, what they're trying to do is kind of close to demons, but they're really trying to take over the middle of the board, rely on their durability, and the cool thing is that your opponent cannot come and hit you first, either because you have fight first, you have heroic interactions like the lion, which is quite durable and can be protected. But on top of that, if they do come near you, your Terminators are going to get into melee, which is what they want. And your guns that are behind the Terminators are going to pop off. Or if you don't have guns, the rest of your army that's trying to get into combat is going to get into combat and cause a big headache for your opponent. And it takes a lot of damage to actually kill 10 Terminators. It's not cheap to do so, unless you have the perfect profile like Exocrines and damage 3. You're not going to be able to get through these Terminators effectively, and these annual style of lists try to create a early points advantage by doing this. They do have to be careful while doing it, but generally they create a 5-point advantage to primary. Sometimes it's 10 points, and then they are lackluster on secondaries because they have 500 points of Terminators just sitting in the middle of the board, and a lot of their other units are moving up the board very slowly. Because they're doing this, it makes your opponent play defensively, and it means you can't really go into their base, and they're going to be screening out rapid ingresses from your other 10-man Terminators. Why is this relevant? It's basically relevant for the next army, which is Death Guard. I'm not going to really spawn one because I don't have one saved. I might have my old list saved, but it's kind of irrelevant. Death Guard, I do have Death Guard. These are my 9th edition lists, but yeah, this is not going to be relevant. So Death Guard is an annual style list, which is very, very defensive. It's not a castle exactly. You can consider it a castle, but a castle requires a king to be hiding inside of it and things to be like protected. And this is a very much like an anvil style or whatever. I mean, it is a castle, but it's just moving at the board, being extremely durable, like a bulwark, right? And it's taking up the board state. It's being Deathwing Knights, really hard to shift, or Horde armies, which are extremely durable, lots of models, playing for the primary, and they might not do a crap ton of damage to you, or they might ask you to respect them because they're durable and they hit hard, but they're slow, which means they have to lose 3 or 4 models, 25-30% of their effectiveness has to be removed before they get into combat, and it's up to you to make sure that you can kill the whole unit before they get to you, or cripple it so much that you don't mind when it eventually charges you. But they're good at buying space on the map. Death Guard is one of these armies. They have lots of deep strikes, lots of Terminators, lots of defensive buffs to keep them alive. Most of you guys, if you guys didn't play in 9th, there used to be armies and abilities in the game that told you can't reroll to hit, you can't reroll to wound, you're -1 to hit and -1 to wound. So no rerolls, you're -1 to hit and -1 to wound. How are you going to kill 10 Terminators? You're not. You're just winning on 4s, you have no rerolls, and you're hitting on 4s, you have no rerolls. So it's basically 25% of whatever you're doing is getting through, and then they have 4-up invuls. So it's actually like 12.5% is getting through, and then they have 3 wounds apiece. And then CSM used to have a revive strat. So even if you get all that damage through, you kill 1 or 2 Terminators, they revive 1 anyways. So you realistically aren't doing shit to them. And if you have Funeral Pains on top of that, it's even more difficult. Black Templars are an army that abuse this very effectively because they have 4 wounds apiece, 4-up invuls, 2-up safe, and 5-up Funeral Pain at all times. You're not going to chew through 40 wounds with a 4-up, 2-up, or 2-up, 4-up with a 5-up Funeral Pain. That's effectively like 5.5 wounds per model. You got to do 60 damage through a 4-up invul and a 2-up base save with armor contempt and cover. That's highly unlikely. Like, even me, it's extremely difficult to do that. I can, but it requires me having the perfect tools or my entire army shooting it, and generally that's not going to happen. because if I do explode my whole army to kill a 500 point unit, my 2,000 points of my army might just be dead next turn. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So hopefully that covers everything. Chris, if there's other examples, we can cover it on Thursday. If other people have questions, just message me or ask about it. This is a longer video. I don't want to make it too long, so I'm going to cut it here. I feel like most of the fundamental stuff I covered earlier in the video, and then just talking about different armies here and how they use the fundamentals mostly just goes back to that. It doesn't really go into this. I kind of showed how the board state looks like for them and what they're trying to do with it based off our earlier talk about the chessboard, and the Drukhari example and the demon example of like teleporting and getting on is how they want to play. And the Space Marine list want to like be trading up in points, effectiveness, and efficiency rather than trading one for one. They're always going to be trading up and getting multiple uses out of their army or their units and getting multiple activations. And that's why the Space Marine armies are much more difficult to use, because you have half the amount of units as Drukhari does. Drukhari wants to do one for ones all day, if they can, and most of the units just have fire and fade, so those units are automatically getting 3, 4, 5 turns of shooting or whatever. But for you, you just have these Space Marines that have no gimmicks, and trying to get twice as much value out of half of the amount of units in your army is very, very difficult to keep up with a hyper MSU army or a cheap / damage army, aka Xenos, that don't care about durability, but you are automatically paying for durability in your wounds and your 3-up saves, which I know don't matter. Sometimes they do with AOC, and that's what it is. It's about funneling extra resources, stratagems, support pieces to make sure that your Space Marines stay alive, your units stay alive, popping smoke or armor contempt on hackathons, and getting more value out of it that way by like changing up the math a bit and positioning, while the other armies just have it automatically built in. Like a Keeper of Secrets is 200 something points and has -1 damage at all, -1 to hit at all times. It can heal itself if you take a 15-point enhancement. It has a Feel No Pain. It's toughness 10 with a 4-up invul. It's getting its value just by being on the board. It's just a stat stick that is not going to lose value unless you run into the open and your opponent shoots it off the map in one go and you don't get anything out of it. As long as it does something, aka it charges, it scores you primary, it's doing something. And most of the time, it's going to do all of that. If probably not score primary, but it's going to get damage in, and it's going to score you some points, whether by killing or doing action or being on the board for engage. It's going to do something, and it also takes a lot of actual points to kill it. So those units kind of just do themselves, and they don't require the pilot to use them effectively. They just are effective by themselves as long as you don't suicide them like an idiot, right? Okay, that's it. So yeah, it just goes back to board position and movement consistently. You really got to understand what you're trying to move, how you're trying to move it. Are you trying to reserve a lot of stuff, gain movement that way? Are you trying to create pockets? Are you trying to do other things? And what is your opponent trying to do? Once you understand the contrast between what your opponent's trying to do and what you're trying to do, you can play the game differently and easier, or better for you. And board position, it goes into list building, and board position is very, very valuable. You have to hold the board position. As soon as you start losing board position, your army is no longer functioning in the way that it wants, because you can't get angles, you can't get into combat with things that you want. His screens are so far up the board that you're being move blocked, and it causes problems. Yeah, alright, I'm gonna call it here. Hopefully this is good. See ya.